Hi, I'm JB Jones,
And I'm Bella Naiman.
and we're the co-founders of NYC Jewelry Week. We are excited to welcome you to our 6th year New York City Jewelry Week 2023.
Welcome to our virtual talks program. On our YouTube channel, you'll get to enjoy incredible content that we've put together for you with the theme of iconography, looking at the past, present, and future of jewelry.
You can see the full schedule on our website at nycjewelryweek.com, and we invite you to explore all the programs there. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So, hello everybody, my name is Mazzi Odu. I'm a writer and editor based in Lagos in Nigeria, and it's an absolute privilege and joy, and I'm super excited to be having this conversation with Francesca Grima. For those watching who aren't aware of the context, Francesca is the creative director of Grima Jewelry, and Grima Jewelry was founded by her father, Andrew, who is very much a 20th century icon in the jewelry landscape. So without further ado, Francesca, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mazzi.
And it's such a pleasure. So I am going to just dive right in because I think it's always best. And your father, Andrew, was known as the father of modern British jewelry. So I just want to get your take on what do you think modern jewelry is, or modernist jewelry, or even within the British context, was there something slightly different going on compared to other parts of the world? So it'd be wonderful to hear your perspective on that.
I think modernism in general is a departure from something that's classic. And my father was one of the first jewelers to really depart from the bows and the bees in classical jewelry and create something totally different. And I think it was because of his training in engineering and lack of training in the arts and jewelry that he wasn't he didn't feel that he was constrained to the idea of what a piece of jewelry needed to look like. So that to me is what modernism is. It's this departure from the norm to create something completely different.
But I think also what you've touched upon, which I think is really interesting, is the fact that your father, in terms of jewelry, was an autodidact, but he had this strong engineering background. And, you know, again, one sort of sees some of when one thinks about classical Grima design language, things like textured wire come into play. It's very sculptural. There is an elements of geometry appear in some pieces. And also he's very much well known for sort of upending notions of materialism. So, you know, using gemstones that historically then weren't considered intrinsically valuable compared to, you know, your classic big four. It wasn't always let's head for the emeralds, let's head for the diamonds and rubies or sapphires. So I want to ask you, what do you think that sort of materialism departure, especially in light of this notion of modernism and departing from the new, and what did that create in terms of for the Grima design universe, for want of a better phrase?
I mean, I think ultimately anything that pleased him aesthetically, he would use. So it could have been a piece of lichen that he would cast, or it could be an unusual agate. And he didn't care if it cost, you know, £50 or £500. He would still, you know, he'd like to celebrate them and surround them in precious metals and scatter them with diamonds. And he was one of the first jewelers to ever do this. And I think what's also important to note is that he never made a piece of jewelry in his life. So he would go to the goldsmith with the design, and the goldsmith would say, "But Mr. Grima, this is impossible to make." And he'd say, "Well, no, you need to find a way. That's not my problem."
I like that.
Which also means that it completely opens up his imagination, because I think there are lots of jewelers who also had to make. So they would design and subconsciously design something that was easier to make because they knew they had to make it afterwards. So, yeah.
No, so and I think that's, you know, what you just said there, because that's something in my research prior to us meeting today was something I noted, that he's also considered a massive pioneer in pushing the craft behind making jewelry, because he would come with these, extraordinary designs, and people would be like, oh, that's not the usual, we're into our sort of animalia or our flora, and then he's rocking up and with something that really touches me as well is this notion of celebrating nature and then making it into jewelry. So like the Super Shell series immediately strikes to mind, because that would have been quite a feat for someone coming to, the goldsmith in question being told, okay, this is what I want to do with these shells. And you're like, how and why and what? And, it's really interesting because obviously with you growing up with this notion of nature, because, the orange peel ring is almost a flip on that of utilizing gemstones, but them mimicking nature. And then also he used nature and festooned it with gemstones. Did you think this oppositional approach, is it something that you've gone on to explore in your own oeuvre, in your own work?
Definitely in the beginning of my career, I would say. Now I'm much more abstract, but I used to definitely, I used to find pieces from nature and surround them in gold and just, celebrate them. And I think, yes, you can pimp nature, as as you said.
Exactly.
As long as you're careful with what you pimp. That's.
I know. I think the coral brooch also comes to mind, because obviously, you've got the rich red Mediterranean coral. I'm assuming it was Mediterranean coral.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. And then you've got, so it's so deep in its hue, and then the diamonds. But again, it was a very judicious adornment or festooning. So again, that requires that element of restraint of, when have you over-egged the pudding? Have we pimped, or we just like gone to the other side where it's like, no, be gone. So it's really a really interesting and exciting thing. And it doesn't surprise me. So I think also it's really important is, when do these radical ideas come into play? And obviously your father being this iconic force in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of his collectors were people who were known, either they were known as icons in themselves, actors, musicians, the space in German Street being the sort of nexus for creativity and 60s cool people, cool gang hanging. But then you also had a very classical clientele in the royal family, because the late Queen Elizabeth II was a client, her sister, the late Princess Margaret. I believe Princess Anne was presented with an About Time Elegance watch, according to my exact. So there was this. It's very interesting that radical jewelry design found itself into the private collection of the royal family. So they're considered establishment, ergo very staid. So do you think this sort of disruptive energy of the 60s, full stop, whether it's creatively or socially, allowed for these really exciting interchanges? And then, of course, the store being a magnet for it all. I mean, obviously, neither of us were alive at the time. This is conjecture. But when you look at the archive, do you think that that definitely came into the mix with him being very free thinking and possibilities?
Oh, definitely. And I think Lord Snowdon was also a huge catalyst in my father, meeting the royal family. And I have quite a funny story about Princess Anne when she was presented with the Elegance watch, because she opened the About Time collection exhibition at the Goldsmiths Hall. And my father asked her to pick a watch she liked. And she said, oh, I'd love the Elegance watch, but could you make the face a bit lower, because the crystal, the smoky quartz crystal, was quite high. I mean, I think it's 1.7 centimeters high. And my father just said no.
It's like,
sorry,
short answer, Mom, no. And the whole point of it brings me quite neatly to the questions about the About Time series, was this idea of seeing time through the gemstones. So if we start effing with the gemstones, then it's kind of like we've lost the whole, to use the Nigerianism, we've lost the whole cocoa of this. We've lost the essence.
I love that.
It's like, no, I mean, I think it's so radical. Because because the About Time was series was so radical, because obviously it was with Omega, and your father saying, no, you can't put the Omega logo anywhere on there, which good call. I'm not saying, by the way, spoiler alert, I do have an Omega watch, but I'm just contextualizing it there. It wouldn't have been a good look. And then at the same time, also this idea of doing wearable timepieces, but also that look like wearable art. And I think, even to this day, even if you sort of go on the blogosphere, if you go in the sort of, watch collecting communities, it's considered one of the, the best exemplars still. And I just want to ask you, I mean, obviously, what do you think were the enabling elements for him to think so radically? Do you think this was a continuum of already his radical notions with intrinsic value and how he was already using the gemstones in the jewelry? And also, do you think that a major watch house would be as brave as to do that now? Because now everyone's all obsessed with the margins, that idea of creating a one-off, wearable series. Because, we're here talking about jewelry icons this week at New York City Jewelry Week. And I wonder if anyone would be so brave to create something like that in 2023, because I'd be thinking, have we got guaranteed? Is it gonna, is this gonna go be bought, and where are the margins? So just be interesting about both the process and the design. And from your perspective as a creative, do you think, these sorts of collaborations are possible now?
I mean, I think that that the watch collection was so revolutionary, again, because my father never designed watches. So it was like the jewelry. He'd never designed jewelry. So that was, something completely different. And then the watches, it was the same thing. And I think what was so beautiful about that collection, apart from all the designs, was the no branding. And I mean, these days, everyone wants a big logo on the face of their watch because, that's what they want to show off. And it's
but your dad was like quiet luxury before quiet luxury, with a side order of wearable art before wearable art.
Yeah.
So pioneering within pioneering. It's quite extraordinary, that kind of. Yeah, and I think it is also.
Yeah. Sorry. And to me, that collection is perfection. And I've had quite a few people approach me and say, "Oh, would you design another watch collection?" Well, no. Why would I try to better perfection, really? So.
Yeah, and I think that's also ties us neatly to my next question about legacy, because obviously your father passed away in 2007, and you took on being the creative director. I know that your mother Jojo also designs, but you are sort of the principal, or the design principal. I want to ask you, how does it feel both carrying such a huge legacy, both in a personal design perspective, but then also creating new notions for the house? And I think probably a great way for us to talk about this is maybe if we put up that lovely slide of your the Jabo Pin, which should be coming up right about now. If you can talk us through elements of you, elements of Andrew, how you see those coming into play. It'd be fantastic to hear your perspective on this piece.
I mean, it's taken me 42 years to not have imposter syndrome anymore, really.
Wow. And, well done. You're clear now.
It's quite interesting as well, because my father's career only really took off when he was 42. I'm 43 now, so I'm sort of a year in. But yes, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, I think we're obsessed with people being wunderkinder now, and I think sometimes it's literally like ideas and creativity need time to percolate, and even for you to sort of get your head around them before you then express and share with the world. So I think that's an important point you bringing forth. So can you tell us a little bit about the commission and how you came about to create this beautiful piece?
Yes, so I have a wonderful client in Australia, and he had this beautiful green sapphire that he wanted set as a pin. And I thought, well, we've never made a Jabo pin before, so why don't we make one of those? And it's very much in the Grima style with the irregular batons and the, irregular diamond set pieces. But we'd never made a jabot before, so that was quite a challenge. And he's very, very happy with it. So, and it also has this sort of Art Deco-ish.
I was going to say,
vibe,
yeah, it's sort of sitting in both eras. Do you know what I mean? Of sort of classic Grima, but it is also harking back to an era that predates that, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and I love designing pieces that you wouldn't immediately say, oh, that was made yesterday, or something could be that could be Art Deco, something could be medieval. I love that. So I love just creating a bit of mystery, really.
No, I think that also sort of ties in with why we wear jewelry, because it's not necessarily essential for keeping clothes on or such. Although one might need a pin on one's lapel to look complete for an evening out, but it also gives that mystery. It gives another layer of your personality through this piece. And the green sapphire is extraordinary. I mean, really, really beautiful, and an imaginative way to use it. Can you tell us a little bit more about your design process? I mean, how do you create? And I know there's some really beautiful illustrations to follow. How does a sort of dreamscape form into reality for Francesca?
So when I'm designing a piece of jewelry for us to have in stock, I'll mostly be inspired by the stone. And so I'll look at the stone and I'll look at how it will be best shown off, really. So that would be the start. And then I usually, rather than loads of sketches, I'll usually do one sketch and then paint it up, and then that's it. And because I've found that my first idea is always the best, and if I overthink it, it's just it's
so true. And it's so interesting that you said something there of the gemstone is always the star. So is that something that you always believe in? Is that your sort of like credo? Is let the gemstone be the star of the show rather than anything else?
Yeah, and that's why when you'll see my other designs, which are sort of more of my I love painting anyway, whether I have a project or not. I will sit here and paint in the evening. It just really relaxes me, and it's almost, I don't go to therapy, so it's almost like therapy for me. It's a sort of a meditation. And what I do is I challenge myself to design without a stone. So I make, I'll just do a whole load of diamonds, because after all, it's just an imaginary piece that will never be made up anyway. So,
should we see some of these imaginary pieces? I'm sure the viewers want to know. Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
So that's an ongoing project. It's my dream earring collection. So that's part of it. So those are moonstones.
Wow. So there'll be all moonstones. And would you facet some? None?
None. No, they'd all be cabochon.
Just all cabochon.
And then they'd have these sort of knife edge wires in between that would make it all flexible, so that as you turn, it will just move with you.
They move with you. So they almost, like if you go out and continue dancing, they're also another element. Yes. And that's something I see a lot in the pieces you've designed. There is an element of, they're luxurious, but there's also an insouciance that sort of slides into all of your pieces. And do you think is that something that you've consciously thought about, or is that just a facet of who you are and how you view, luxury and so on? It'd be really interesting to hear.
I don't think when I design that there's much that is conscious, if you know what I mean. I don't think, I'm going to be inspired. It's coming from somewhere. And oftentimes I think, my father's behind me and just looking on and, helping me with my designs, or telling me when one design's better than the other. I don't know. I just get these,
No, I think someone needs to wear these earrings for the Oscars. We need to manifest it, because, go beyond the usual suspects, people in Place Vendôme, and head to Francesca. They're stunning. You can just imagine them with pretty much any coloured gown. They would just look fantastic. And all complexions, all nationalities and races would look
and
really,
I'm
really
sure they'd reflect a disco ball really well.
That's what I was going to say. Exactly. Once you're on the dance floor with your statuette, they would be amazing. It's absolutely beautiful, really beautiful. And again, it's so interesting because what you were saying about disrupting, you're disrupting the chandelier earring here. When you were saying about, the modernist movement. So I'm seeing that thread of disruption in your body of work, but still being very classical. It's beautiful.
And what's nice about these is that they don't have any diamonds, so you can wear them sort of day to night pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think again with all the, I think it's good to get people thinking about other gemstones. Again, not diamonds, but I think other gemstones can also, and this again ties in with your house's raison d'etre of getting people to think beyond intrinsic value. I think, again, when I was doing my research and reading about your father, and he sort of said something about, you can correct the quote for me, if it's an XYZ carat diamond, it's in a vault. But if it's, what was it? Did he say, was it a tourmaline or a topaz? Citrine.
I think
you can wear it. And I just thought, exactly. It's, what's the point of it sitting in a bank vault and being worn on your wedding day, and then that's it, because you're frightened and not wearing it day to evening like a piece like this.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful.
And I think
really
jewelry should be worn to create memories. It's like music, it's like smells and tastes. It should create, I was wearing that ring when that happened, or this beautiful, I don't know. I mean, that's
I think it is. I mean, it's another part of the sensory landscape, because also depending on the kind of piece you're wearing, like my engagement ring is an unusual shape because it's quite sculptural. When you just touch it and you feel it, you are reminded of that moment.
Yes.
So whereas, and I think that's what you mean about jewelry, sort of animating memories and animating sense of self as well, is something really, really important. And I think all of us who love jewelry, we're like, yes, completely confer and agree.
And I think it's so important that jewelry is tactile as well. You were talking about touching your engagement ring. It needs to feel nice. Otherwise,
Yes. I mean, that's something, one of my personal favorites of yours, the dart ring, just feels like that would be a joy to have on the hand and just be sort of stroking as the day goes by. And likewise,
you'll have to come and try us on.
I think so. Or let's manifest fully and it return with me to Lagos. No point trying on if we're not like leaving with. It's a magnificent ring, and likewise your disco ring as well has that tactility. But I do think what you said about it, sort of animating memory and being sort of an emotional prompt, is really, really beautiful. And do you have any other lovely drawings? Oh, this one's close up.
Yes, that one was way more extravagant. But
wow.
I actually, because I'm still not a perfect gouache jewelry illustrator. So this is my practice, really. And so there are days when I think, okay, well, I'm going to practice carré diamonds or a drop shaped diamond, and then I make a design out of it, because I'd rather do that than just paint a whole load of stones.
Yeah.
So
this one obviously is a classic diamond situation.
Diamond situation.
Yeah.
So that's
I kind of like the
that's
Moonstone
the disco ball in itself, really.
Yes, that is literally the disco is on. The party is you. If you wear stinky dress, done and done, you are the party.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful, 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 beautiful. And a little bit of jewelry etiquette. This is a sidebar, because you always have a perfect manicure. Do you think that's really essential if you're going to carry off rings well?
I think it's become without wanting to sound pretentious, it's become my thing, because I find that my hands look really stubbly without long nails. I mean, I've cut them a few times. So the sort of long nails and the manicures become my thing.
But I think it's almost you're giving us, I think there's always an element. I think I'm a great believer in lifelong learning. And whenever I go to your feed and just see both stunning rings and then a really on point manicure, I'm thinking, yeah, this would be a disgrace if they were on my hands right now, because they're neither painted, they're not the same size, length, shape, and it's a bit like.
Yeah, but I think it's actually quite cool. I think it's quite cool when women just wear, they wear off their nail polish and it's a bit chipped, and then they're wearing a really cool ring with it. They can, if you can pull it off, why not?
I gravitate. Yeah, I gravitate towards polish, and you've kind of you've schooled me. I certainly, when I do go out in the evenings, I now follow your lead. If I'm wearing nice rings, and paint my nails properly and make them the same shape, size. But no, that's a sidebar. But I do think it's also, again, getting yourself ready and showing your best side. And it's something beautiful. And so tell me a little bit about some of your favorite pieces, and what do you think are the Francesca style? I mean, if people go to your personal feed, they'll see lots of images of your travel. They'll see lots of images of architecture, of classic cars. So there's already sort of hints in your feed about your universe. It would be really interesting for you to take us through that via a couple of pieces that you
absolutely
share with us.
I mean, it's quite interesting, because when I was younger, and people said, so what do you bring to Grima that is different from your father? I would say, oh, I bring a feminine touch. And now it's completely changed, and now I'd almost say that I'm bringing a more masculine touch, because it's so minimal, and so it's gone from very feminine to very masculine, and I don't know why. I mean, it's just it's the aging process, I guess. It's what is what inspires me, and the Scandinavian design and mid-century modern architecture, and
Yeah, because I mean, I know you're a massive fan of brutalist architecture movement, and that's also, and also I love the way that when you're talking about sort of the masculine touch and the sort of minimalism, which again is something that people often think about when they think about Scandinavian design motifs, but then there's also an element of boldness, and that's really seen in this ring. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you came to gemstone choices and what you were hoping to say through this piece?
So I wanted to create something. I mean, these two rings, totally monochrome, obviously. So we've got the star dioxides, and then we've got the pearls. But I had them on my desk, and I just came up with this design. And I thought, oh, this design looks really cool. Must have been inspired by Scandinavian design, no clue. But as I said, my thought process, there's nothing that's really conscious when I'm inspired. It just happens. And so then I posted them on Instagram, and a friend of mine replied and said they look exactly like the light fittings at 180 Strand, which is this place I go to. It's a sort of a haven for designer furniture. And I looked back in my camera roll. I mean, I have 60,000 photographs in my camera. So I looked back, and 2 weeks before, I'd been at 180 and took a photograph of this light fixture. Exactly. So, and I was like,
oh my goodness.
My subconscious, crazy.
No, and it's so interesting, because what you've done with the rings is, I mean, again, so had you say cut the juice? I mean, what you've done with the rings is you've created a different sort of balance, because obviously by wearing them how you're wearing them, because obviously they're two rings with the space in between. I mean, people can wear them how they like, but I think that also gives this notion of refraction of light as well, which is really, really, really beautiful. And when you now see the light fitting at 180 Strand, that's interesting. So the built environment literally enters into your subconscious and comes out as stunning jewelry.
And that's why sorry,
go on.
No, that's why I try not to look at other jewelry too much, other jewelry designers, because I don't want that to come into my subconscious, because I would never want to copy any other jewelers. So I have to be careful.
I know. I mean, it's something I've had told to me before by other jewelers, of this dichotomy of, obviously you love jewelry, but consciously trying not to look at too many feeds, because before you know it, it just might lodge in your head and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm doing a Tafan tribute act, or it's a spot of Melanie Georgopoulos, or a spot of Jacqueline Rabin sort of plonked into the middle of my process. So no, I think it is really, really exquisite. I mean, I love these two pieces, and I mean, either worn separately or together. I mean, together they look really nice though.
I also designed a green tourmaline one that goes across the finger, so it's got the two across the finger. So that's quite cool as well. So it's sort of
And I mean, just again, a sidebar of wearability with double rings, because a lot of people are a bit afraid of them. So would you suggest people wear them on the hand that they don't write with, for instance, easier, or just wear them how you like?
I wear them how you like, with the manicure. Just get on with life and enjoy.
I love this. You're like, I don't do rules, Mazzi. I'm not like jewelry etiquette half hour. Please go away. But no, I mean, again, what you were saying, though, speaking to earlier about being able to wear these pieces. So normally people think of this kind of ring, think I can only wear it in the evening, but obviously how it's been styled here, it can just as easily be worn in the day. And I think it's sort of also about expanding people's notions of how and when and where they can wear jewelry is equally a part of, sort of utilizing your soft power as an iconic house, as someone that people, I think, now go to your feed as much for inspiration on how to wear pieces as they do for the pieces themselves. I certainly know quite a few jewelry bloggers who are inspired by how you wear the jewelry. So it's really interesting, sort of as accidental jewelry influencer. Entirely unplanned.
I love contradictions in life. So for example, I recently went to watch the youngest grime artist ever to perform at the Royal Albert Hall. And so I love seeing those sort of situations. So wearing jewelry with casual attire, just to me, that's the way to wear it, really.
Yeah, I think that's also true glamour, because if you have everything has to be festooned. If you always have to, it's a bit like someone only, driving their classic car if they're going to an important event. I mean, I think if you enjoy driving and automobiles is your thing, why can't you just utilize the thing that you love any day and every day? And I think, again, talking to, if the piece of jewelry makes you feel better, makes you sit better, it makes you speak more lucidly, then, put it on. I think that's it's a really interesting notion, and something for people to carry on and carry forth. And so I'd love to see the necklace that you designed as well, if we could. And tell us about what inspired this design.
So interestingly, my father designed a similar necklace, but with Baroque pearls, and the batons in between were set with diamonds. And I was looking at that and I thought, but I could make something that's Grima-esque and that's, my father's, but not really, and just make it, match my double rings. So this is what I came up with. And at first I was thinking of having carré diamonds in between on the batons. And then I just thought, no, I want it to be casual. And I love this sort of medieval effect it has. It could have been a medieval necklace.
Totally. It's something that Eleanor of Aquitaine could have worn.
And it's quite wearing as well, which I love. So
I love that. No, I mean, it really does. It definitely has that sort of high medieval vibe, the sort of, Anjou court, where it was a real sort of epicenter for jewelry at the time. But no, it's really something. I almost feel that if you'd done the diamonds and the batons, it might have been, again, a little bit too much.
It would have been way too much.
Really elegant, and just, again, it sort of opens up the possibilities of how you can wear it. You can even wear it with a sweater, like you had a pullover in the winter, and it could just sit on top, which would, I'm not saying you couldn't do it with diamonds, but I think it's really, really lovely.
And that's the great thing about, working with the goldsmiths we work with, who are within walking distance from us, and we oversee the whole process. And so the design can change, 4 or 5 times during the process, so everything's handmade in London. And I think, being able to change the piece of jewelry as it's being made is fantastic.
Yeah, and talk about, I just, as you were saying that about working with the goldsmiths, so that relationship is, I imagine, just like with your gemstone saucer, really, really intimate relationships for yourself as a independent jewelry house, but also a maison that's known for a very specific aesthetic, and then obviously with the continuum of what you're doing. I mean, how has that come about? Is that just a question of building relationships and then you just maintain, you stay with the same people, or, how does it work? Because, I mean, it's just fascinating for those listening who may be actually in the industry from your perspective, as in they're designers or makers. And they might be thinking, well, how on earth do I find if you're a designer, how on earth do I find a great maker, a great goldsmith? Or if I'm a maker, how on earth do I source really great gemstones? I'm not in the crowd. So how does it work? Just for those listening who are from that side of the business.
So
is it just
the goldsmiths we work with were working for my father, most of them.
So it's like a relationship that's continued.
The relationship that's continued, and the same goes with the stone dealers. Although now I work with their father's children, if you know what I mean.
Wow. So everyone is like family businesses that are being passed on.
Yeah. There's this level of trust that you won't get anywhere else, really. And goldsmithing is a dying art, and most goldsmiths who are in London are putting together pieces that were were made in the Far East, and they're just doing assembling, which is a bit sad. So everything's cast in the Middle East, and then they send them back to London. They assemble them so they can say, well, it's made in the UK, but it's not really. So,
my goodness. So, and do you think that's just a question of just how, the craft and the applied arts industry in general is having that challenge in the global north of some spaces and places there's dying art, or people they're just relying on automated elements to make pieces rather than the hand and embedded energy of a human being part of the process, which we've seen.
I think it's very difficult because a lot of people who are looking at jewelry, they might not have the education of what to look for in a handmade piece of jewelry. So someone says, this is handmade, and they don't know it's cast. Something that's cast is not handmade in my mind. So it's just it's tricky, but
it's tricky. But I think that's where sort of education in all its senses comes into play, because not necessarily everybody can afford to have formal education, but I suppose this is where sort of picking up things and having fora for it. Yes, I think that's the right word. Or forums, I think.
Never heard that before.
I mean,
you are more eloquent than me.
I sort of just like bringing us home, and to two things. People are talking about artist jewelers a lot and jewelry artistry a lot, and we spoke about it earlier in this conversation of you being very much as a house, and also even yourself in your own practice now as a creative director. Your jewelry, is shown in places like Masterpiece. It's shown in places that are sitting on the nexus of wearable art and artist jewelry. How would you describe your maison if someone was asking? I know it sounds really pretentious. Would you say we're artist jewelers or jewelry artists? Or you say it's just jewelers, let's just chill? I mean, it would be interesting. And do you even think that kind of distinction is necessary for yourselves and that perspective? Because these are pieces that now, Grima jewelry does come up at auction. It's highly collectible. There's certain pieces that, you're going to have to, sell a kidney to get a hold of, like the About Time ones. I mean, or have a relative that was very stylish and awake and alert in the early 70s and has one to gift you. But I just want to know your thoughts on that artist jewelry And before we come in home for our final question.
I think, well, I would describe it as wearable sculpture. I feel that it all looks a lot better when it's worn, but it can also stand.
I mean,
on
this
its
picture is a case in point.
Yeah.
How it's sitting perfectly in the collarbone. You can see.
Yeah. So, I mean, that necklace, for example, I think it looks a lot better around the neck, but it will also stand on its own and be a beautiful piece that's tactile. And I think sculpture should be tactile as well. So, it has that tactility, it has that movement, it has that effortless flow, which I think is so important in a piece of jewelry. And it should be as beautiful from the front as it is from as the other way around, from the back as it is from the front. So, yeah, I would call it wearable sculpture, but at the same time, I really don't think we need to differentiate ourselves or call ourselves anything.
No, I quite like that idea of wearable sculpture because, of course, some of the pieces, some of the rings particularly, are quite large, in average. We've now, in a way, commercialization has made things become smaller because I'm imagining a greater margin. You can, sell them more at a bigger margin and they're tiny. Whereas there is something also about having the audacity of intent to have almost a piece of sculpture on your hand. So your hand now in itself becomes a work of art twicefold, obviously as part of your body, which, I think the human body is very beautiful. And then at the same time, then adding elements to this living sculpture with these wearable ones. I think that's a great titular sort of working title for how you operate. And my final question, which ties into the week's theme, so NYC Jewelry this year is icon, in brackets, and iconography. So we are obviously exploring jewelry icons and also their iconography. And I want to ask a question to you. I hope you don't find it too cringe. How does it feel for you to be a modern jewelry icon in and of yourself? Because you definitely are. There are a lot of people I know who would be very nervous meeting you just because of your body of work being so important and very much a part of the modern jewelry canon. And then also simultaneously holding space for being the daughter of another jewelry icon. So I want to know, is that something one thinks about? Do you think it's a little bit cringe? It would be very interesting to think. And do you think your iconography, when say, in the fullness of time, you pass on and people now look at the Grima, what is the Grima fingerprint in the overall global history of contemporary jewelry?
So, well, I'm very flattered. Thank you.
No, we tell no lies here.
I definitely don't wake up in the morning and think, wake up, jewelry icon.
You have more pieces to create for the canon.
Yes, I would say I would say I'm in the pursuit of greatness, which is a very healthy thing to be. I'm never going to be the best jewelry designer. I'm not, but I'm trying to get there. And I think that's a healthy way of being. And that makes, life go on. And, that's how it is, really. And as I was talking about my father earlier, yes, I lived with imposter syndrome for a very long time. He was incredible in every way. And so he was definitely an icon, and I look up to him, and I just, but as I was talking about the Omega collection and perfect I thought it was, the same goes for his career. And so I don't want to try and match his career and him and his greatness. I'm just happy to, be myself and do my little thing. So, yeah.
And be great in your own right. As I am happy to close out on that, because you truly are a contemporary great. I certainly know loads of jewelry, both collectors, designers, makers, who are complete fanboys and fangirls of your work, and are really excited by your feed and are animated by what you're doing. And when you see pieces like this piece, that we're closing out with, you can tell that there is so much deliberation, there's so much thought and care and consideration. There's also so much of that intangible, you can't bottle it talent, because someone can sit there and think, oh, I really want to make it look like this, but you've either got it or you haven't, and you definitely have it in spades.
Thank you,
So
Mazzi.
thank you so
Thank you so
much,
much.
Francesca.
That
It's
was
been
really
an
fun.
absolute joy to have you. Thank you.